Okay, let's take a look again at this example. First of all, let's talk about the rule. You see here that I've got the rule as an if-then proposition. This is called conditional. And it makes this a conditional deductive syllogism. The statement, all people are mortal, which is basically what Aristotle said, that's categorical, right? So if you fit into the category of person, then you're mortal. It's a categorical rule. Not all, as you know, not all legal rules are categorical, right? We have factors rules, we have elements rules, we have balancing tests, we have means-ends tests, things like that. So that categorical statement will not work to accommodate all the different types of legal rules that you have to apply. The conditional syllogism, so the all are construct won't work because that's not how the law works. Factors, for example, you don't say, you can't make a categorical statement about a factor, because factors don't have that predictive value, right? A factor makes something more likely. It doesn't make something absolutely necessarily, right? There isn't something that absolutely necessarily follows from a factor being met or from a party having a strong argument on a factor. So, so the all are construct doesn't work. So we use if-then. The if-then construct, a way of phrasing a rule, let me not say in 100% of cases, but in every case I can imagine, the if-then structure will work because that is the way all legal rules work. All legal rules have some consequence. The consequence might just be that it's more likely that the law is constitutional, right? But still there's a consequence that you can state from something having happened or some condition having been met. Which brings us to the first part, the if part. So rules have ifs. If X happened, or if condition Y exists, right? We're always trying to ultimately predict legal outcomes. But legal outcomes don't cause themselves, right? Something has to have happened before the legal outcome will occur. Or some condition must exist, or set of conditions must exist before a legal outcome will occur. So there's an if this, then that. If you break, then the first element of burglary is met. If you enter, then the second element of burglary is met. If the law regulates economic activity under the Commerce Clause, if Congress's law regulates economic activity, then the law is more likely constitutional. So you want to get used to thinking this way. One of the reasons I emphasize this, way too many students and lawyers focus on the then part instead of the if part. You'll say something like this: breaking is the first element of burglary. So you'll notice, by the way, rules are often stated not as if-then propositions. Your brain has to turn them into if-then propositions. Right? The first element of burglary is breaking. Well, what does that mean? If there's a breaking, then the first element is met. Now, way too many, as I was saying, lawyers and students will say that, oh, the important part of that is whether the first element was met. That's the question, is whether the first element was met. Wrong, wrong, wrong. The question is not whether the first element was met. That takes care of itself because that's the then. You need to be focusing on the if. You're not analyzing whether the first element is met, you're analyzing whether there was a breaking. You're looking in the fact pattern for whether there was a breaking. The wheels can come off. I can't tell you how many answers I've seen where the wheels came off right there because a student was focused on the consequence. They were asking whether the first element was met. They never even asked whether there was a breaking. Right? They said breaking was an element, but they didn't ask whether there was a breaking. They just asked whether the first element was met. Well, that's not the question. The question is whether there was a breaking. Again, the rest of it takes care of itself. So I want you to start thinking about this, and not only in con law, but in all of your courses. That as you learn new rules, think about what is the if here. I call that, by the way, the trigger, because a trigger is a consequence. So you got a rule trigger, if, and you got a rule consequence then. So in this example, the rule trigger is person. If you're a person, the consequence would be mortal. So there's a condition that needs to be met for a consequence to follow. In the next sentence, so that's your first sentence. You have two positions. You have the if and the then. In your second sentence, you also have two different things going on, your subject and your predicate for you grammarians out there. But we introduce the person to whom we are applying the rule, that would be Socrates, and we state the facts. So there's two things going on. Who are we applying the rule to, and what facts? And then in the third sentence, we see Socrates appearing again, and we reach our conclusion based again on the application of the rule to the facts. So here's that structure graphed out. We have our three sentences, but you notice that there are 6 different positions. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Position 1 is the if of the rule. Position 2 is the then. I hope this is clear, and you can rewind it and keep watching it if it's not. Position 3 introduces the subject. That is the person or entity to whom we are applying the rule. And position 4 states the facts. Now, facts need to be stated with specificity. We'll talk more about that as we move along in our essay prep. So there you go. So 1 is the if, 2 is the then, 3 is the subject, 4 is the facts. 3 is, of course, our conclusion. We're going to conclude about the person or entity to whom we're applying, or to which we're applying the rule. So the subject again, and then at position 6 we state our legal conclusion. Right. So if, person, then, mortal. Right. That's 1 and 2. Number 3, Socrates. Number 4, person. Number 5, Socrates. Number 6, our conclusion is mortal. Now, do you notice a pattern? We have established now that we have 3 sentences with 6 parts. In a deductive syllogism, in a legal argument, we have 3 sentences, 6 parts. So let me ask you, when you look at this slide, how many ideas are there in this syllogism? We're getting to why it is a perfect syllogism, why it's a strong argument, and why a judge or jury would have to accept it. How many ideas do you see in this, on this slide in this syllogism? You should have said 3. There are 3 ideas in the syllogism, each of which repeats twice. At position 1, we see the idea person show up for the first time. That's an idea, the idea person. At position 2, we see the idea mortal show up. So that's a separate idea, right? Person is one idea, mortal is a second idea. Socrates is an idea, right? A specific person, Socrates, shows up at position 3. And you notice what starts to happen now is that the ideas start to repeat. At position 4, person shows up for the second time. So our trigger term is person. This is making sense? Our trigger term is person, and the facts say person. So it looks like our trigger has been pulled. At position 5, Socrates shows up for a second time. And at position 6, because now we know that this conclusion must flow, the idea mortal shows up for the second time. So we have 3 ideas, each of which repeats twice, and the ideas repeat in this pattern. This is the magic pattern in legal argumentation. If A, then B, C is A. So we're talking here idea A, idea B, and idea C, right? Idea A being your rule trigger, idea B being your rule consequence, and idea C being the person or entity to whom or to which you are applying the rule. If A, then B, C is A, so C is B. So you look at this pattern, A, B, C, A, C, B. Now when you say this in your head over and over again, it starts to make sense. It's irrefutable. There's some logic to this, right? It's intuitive when you think about it. If A, then B. If I tell you that, if A, then B. If it's A, then it's also B. It has to be. If it's A, then it's B. And then I tell you that C is A. Right, well, I already told you that if it's A, it's B. Now I'm telling you that if it's C, that C is A. And if it's A, it's B, then it has to also follow that C is B. So this is the magic structure of legal argumentation. Now, the key is that the ideas always have to repeat in this pattern, because when you look at the beauty of this, right, you got your if and your then, you got your person or entity you're applying the rule to, and then you've got your facts. And what the point is here, that obviously the person you're applying the rule to has to be the same person you're concluding about. Your conclusion has to flow from the rule consequence, but the real action, the real work happens at the A's, at positions 4 and 1. Think about this. What we're always asking you to figure out is whether the facts and the fact pattern pull the trigger, right? Whether the A's match at positions 4 and 1. And that again is what is often overlooked. Students tend to think we're testing something else. We're not. We're testing you on 4 and 1 position, idea A. Do the facts pull the trigger? Do the facts and the fact pattern meet the requirements, right, the substantive requirements of the rule? Whether it's a definition, or something has to have happened, or something has to have not happened, whatever the case may be, do the facts match up with it? So in the next short video, we'll talk about how we law professors mess this up to mess with your heads, okay, and get you to have to do a lot of work.